It's my very, very great pleasure to introduce Professor Lyn Beazley, who was appointed the Chief Scientist of WA in 2006. After her education at Oxford and Edinburgh universities, Professor Beazley built an internationally renowned research team that focused on the recovery from brain damage, and much of her research was carried out at UWA. Professor Beazley has served on numerous bodies and boards advising state and federal governments, including advisory boards to the Australian Research Council, and I'm going to have to work hard on this one, the Australian Synchrotron and Western Australia's Low Emissions Energy Development Fund. It's a hard work at this start of the morning. She currently chairs the National Advisory Board at the Primary Industry Centre for Social Education, and is a member of several boards such as the Institute for Radio Astronomy Research and the Far Ear Science Institute Australia. We finally get the bit that's important for this morning. She's going to share her journey using Twitter and social media to share her messages. So please would you welcome Professor Beazley.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. Let me first acknowledge we're meeting on Noongar land to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and those to come, because I know we all want a better Australia for every single Australian. I was really excited to be invited to come here today because I have a bit of sort of personal experience of this sector, because my mum came to live with us when she was 83, English, and I'm an only child. Would have faced, I think, a very lonely future in Britain on her own. In fact, it reminds me of a story by Noel Coward, who was asked if he was upset that as he aged, his friends were dropping off the mortal coil, and he said, well, I'm just very grateful if they last through luncheon. But Mum came to live with us very happily for 13 years, and then we had experience of needing more help to provide for her in her last 4 years. She made 100, absolutely wonderful to see, card from the Queen, and her life and her death with the Salvation Army. I just don't know if there's anyone here from the Sali Army here today, but I just can't speak highly enough of everything they did, and what a huge difference those happy last 4 years of my mum's life made to her, but to our entire family. So absolutely everything you do, I think, is so crucial and so important. And I just want to, I'm going to tell you two stories about Mum, but the first one is, and I noticed there's an op shop under South Care. Now, I'm a bit of a recycled boutique fan. And one of the things I wanted to say was, and I'll get to my talk in a sec, the PowerPoint, that terribly important that for personal dignity you wear the things you want to wear. And when Mum came to live with us, she said, and we went to the shop down the road, which I would hate to say it, but I described in my mind as an old people's frock shop. I don't think they exist so much now. And she said, but this is what old people wear, Lyn. And she didn't look inappropriate, but I think some of you can sort of picture what the shop might have been like. So we then went down to Maya, and that was just a bit overwhelming because it was so big and it was impersonal. And then we found a little op shop on Nicholson Road. It isn't there anymore. It was run by an ex-nurse, and I popped my head in the door one day and said, if I bring my mum down, can you help? So then it became a monthly outing. Myself, my 3 daughters and Mum would go down and ferret around this shop for an afternoon a month, and then we'd go and have afternoon tea somewhere. And not only did Mum look spectacular, and I don't know if any of you remember this brand, but there used to be skirts called Gore skirts. She'd always want, you can see a nod, always wanted a Gore skirt. She got one, it still had the label on when it was sold from the shop, nobody had worn it. But it was just fantastic because it made a huge difference to Mum's life. And I just wonder if one of the things this sector could do would be to invite the local recycle boutique along occasionally. And I'll return to that again in a minute. But the story was that the kids would look for things there too. And Jenny, my then 14-year-old daughter, she's got gorgeous legs now, but they did look like 2 kebab sticks with a sort of couple of naan bread stuck on the front for the knees. and she picked out a pair of those army boots that laced up. Do you remember the big black ones? And she put them on and they looked dreadful. beautiful. And she said, Mum, will you buy them for me? And I said, darling, I just can't, they look so dreadful. And Mum said, I'll buy them for you, dear. You should have seen your mum when she was 14. She looked like So it's bringing the generations together. So I've somehow got to get these to, have you got a device? Yes? So,
no, I think you just have to,
I know how you do it by hand. There we go. So this is me. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what the Chief Scientist does, so you've got an idea. You can all hear me across there without the mic. Let me get that out of the way, because it's all a bit, else I'm going to fall over something.
Do you want me to move your buttons?
Let's just move this round. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. This is me actually down at the Chem Centre, just along on the Curtin campus. These two young ladies, they're both chemists, and they're the ones who go out when there's a spill, they don't know what it is, or they go to one of those clandestine laboratories that shouldn't exist and blow up regularly, and we hear on the news. I use this when I'm talking to young people to try and say, do science. We actually have one of my former students here today. Where's Beth sitting? There we go, survived me. But it's really important to get young people, as you know, getting into education. My job as Chief Scientist, the Minister of Science, I'm apolitical, I've worked with both governments, but the current Minister for Science is the Premier, so yay, fantastic to see. I'm there to bring science, engineering, technology, maths between industry, government, academia, the community, all working together. Take any one of those legs away and the table falls over, and the community is the one they usually forget to include, and boy, it's the most important to get on board. Advocate for science, because I believe we've got to make some really smart decisions on this planet. Gosh, good planets are hard to find. We've only got this one. We've got to look after it. And an advisor to government. The current one I'm advising on is how we deal with sharks in our oceans, to protect them, but to protect us on shore. Not rocket science, trying to get launching a few things. Doing science, some examples of me out there in various sectors. This one particularly relevant for the age sector, checking eye health and being able to do it in remote communities. Getting the science out there to help everybody. I've got healthcare there, aged care would apply equally. And communicating, and that's why I put these in, because I believe we've got to really get the message out there. You haven't done science or any other job until you've not only done it, you've translated it and you've communicated it. So good on you organising all of this, because it's exactly what we need. That's Sam Walsh from Rio, you will see. He's helped me on Women in Science. Commitments right through the state, because not enough women do science, too many drop out. But I do support with you guys too. And you can see other wonderful people there, the governor and his wife, what wonderful supporters they are of the community. Okay, so let's get on to what I do. I was asked to talk about my experience of social networking, which is really, if you'd asked me that a year ago, I'd have just absolutely collapsed in a heap. And I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm learning. I work through Science Network, wonderful SciTech, and so there are forums there that anyone can get onto to hear what's happening of science in WA. I write a monthly newsletter. I've got over 1,000 readers, which I'm very happy about. It's written, I think, in a user-friendly way, and I'll certainly be putting this up at some point on my regular newsletter, because I think it's really exciting. But I have entered the Twitter age. Now, I don't know where I put all my cards. Here we go. These are my business cards basically for kids. I've got a sort of formal, boring one. But this is what I take out when I go to schools, and every single kid gets one. I want the parents to stick it on the fridge door. If I had any money, I'd buy fridge magnets as well. So they can always remember, whether it's science or not, that for young people to say, if I study more, if I get an education, it's good for me, it's good for my family, for my community, for the world. And you will notice at the top there, you see, is my Twitter account. It's written down here. I'll leave some of these business cards. I have, I don't know if it shows it in the next one. This has gone up a bit since then. I now have one. Oh, I've got 100 and just over 1,100, 1,200, can't remember the exact number, but it keeps growing, which is marvellous, and I get retweeted by others. So if I reference something, if you do something with a little sort of alpha sign in front of it, and it refers to an organisation that's on Twitter too. They retweet yours. So if I mention one of the unis, it bounces out to other places. And Russell Wolfe retweets my tweets for me, the afternoon ABC radio person. So he gets my 1,000 people, then he gets it into his 3,000. He's got more than I have. So it's sort of, the expression is to go viral. Once it's out there, it can keep going. So I always have a few rules. I always keep it positive. Everything I do in my life actually is really positive. It's great to hear, but something negative I wouldn't put up. I don't do it in real time, partly because I don't think I'm quite sort of smart enough to know how to do that, but also because I want to get the spelling right. And I want to pack in as much information as I can, and I almost always have a photo. Is anybody following me on Twitter? No? Yes, yes. Like the photos? Make a difference, don't they? So, and that's, you get 140 characters, that's sort of spaces and letters, but if you have a photo, it cuts it down to 121, and I now think entirely in 121 units. The photo, I think, makes a big difference. I'll show you one of those in a minute. Really easy to do. I don't get to do it every day. Sometimes I do a block of them about 1 in the morning on a Saturday night after husband's fallen asleep and I can sneak out and do them. But at least they're up there. So I put one up. There was a wonderful thing that happened a few months ago when Jupiter slipped behind the moon from our view on Earth, and I put it up on my Twitter straight away. Next morning in the West Australian, there's an account of what was seen the night before, and then it says, WA Chief Scientist Lyn Beazley tweeted, clear sky allows marvellous view of Jupiter moving behind moon, revealed even with my little hand camera. So the news people are following these tweets, and I know that for other reasons too, because if I've done an event and the media haven't been there, I can see they're now going back and backfilling that. And there was one a few weeks ago with the governor with something called Bright Spark, which is an organisation of which I'm privileged to be patron, which is philanthropic and supports young people doing research to help children's illnesses, find out how to cure them. And there was no media there, but the next week there was a story in the West. They'd seen my tweet, they followed it up. So this is another aspect of once you get going on this, it works even more. Here is lovely Kieran McNamara, who was the Director General till recently of Department of Environment Conservation. We very sadly lost him to melanoma out of the blue. It was dreadful. But we had already put in place naming a flower after him. Absolutely beautiful flower from the Pilbara, as you can see. So up that went on my Twitter page that we had named this species after him. And the next thing I knew, I was being phoned up by a journo in the Pilbara who wanted to know more about it. And the next week there's a story on the front page of the Pilbara News. So it really does get out there and bounce across. Okay, I don't do Facebook. I'd be very interested later today to get some feedback. Apologies, I can't stay long after my talk, but I wish I could tell you more about it, but I know it works brilliantly for those who do. This is the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research, of which I'm on the board, and they're really getting the stories out there, engaging with everyone, young people included. Now, I think one of the things that would be brilliant to do through the more aged community, that it's not hard to do, and that is to join these websites that are actually watching our environment. As the climate is changing, and we know it is, we need to know what's going on. And you can get weather patterns, but you want to know what effect that's having on the biology, on the animals and on the plants, as well as on us. So there are these groups that have been set up with apps where you can watch the climate and the things associated with climate and send them in. So, for example, where you see birds, just make a record of it, send it into Climate Watch, and they can see how changes in climate are affecting our local species. So, for example, this is actually quite a rare frog. But if you saw him, and you could also take a photo and send it in, because of course now these days it's easy to take a photo and just send that off. So then if you have a sighting, for example, of birds or frogs, they're a very good sort of sentinel indicator of what's going on with our climate. When plant's first flower in your area? That wouldn't be hard. If you've got a Christmas tree around in the garden somewhere and you see, watch for when the first flower opens. Seems to be getting earlier to me. I've been watching them. It used to be December. Now it's one of my daughter's favourite flowers. And she's in the Gold Coast, and I always ring her the first one I see open, and she's saying, Mum, it's getting earlier in the year. These sort of things that will help us get a better picture of our planet, but keep people really involved. There we are, there's the Christmas tree. That's one of their specific projects. Something that would be easy to do. Here's another one. For people who actually get out and fish our waterways, it's certainly something that all ages do. This is a new site set up, Department of Fisheries. I launched this about 3 weeks ago. Nasty things are sneaking into our waterways, coming in bilge water and the like. We have to stamp them out as soon as we can. So if you spot something, send it into their site. Here are two of the things we least want. This is the Asian paddle crab. It turned up in the Swan about 6 weeks ago. Somebody thought, this doesn't look like the usual thing I'm going to eat for supper. Contacted Department of Fisheries. They got down there, put baits, and they think they've stamped it out. The green lip mussel, we only want to see that frozen in supermarkets, thank you. So, you can really make a contribution and be part of the community. Skype, of course, is really easy. I mean, even I can do it, and I'm just the on-off button sort of girl. So it's great to see, and certainly that's linking communities together. To have a facility that's very easy, where you can just come on board and use it, I think would be fantastic. And contact with the outside world. This is a phone. Now, do we have these in Australia? Now, this was launched in Britain.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so if that could be more widely known, I think it was launched in Britain in 2009. So rather than struggling with a phone like that, and I know I'm always challenged every time I have to get a new mobile phone, you've got one that's a lot easier. I mean, I think that's fantastic to see that they're trying to really reach out and get the sort of phone that actually just makes phone calls, which is all I want it to do. And I think a lot of other people would love that without all the fancy bits, basic price, but does what you want. Which reminds me of the second story I wanted to tell you about my mum. And that was, at the age of 96, we needed more help. And as I say, the Sally Army stepped up brilliantly. She had hearing aids, but we got her a phone just with big numbers so she could ring me at work, which she did frequently. But the most exciting part of the whole year was that one of the exclusive boutiques, just a little bit up in Claremont, at the end of the year, anything they hadn't sold, even at their sort of, anything goes sale, they would send down and put on a rack in the sort of sitting room area. And first come, first served. This was the absolute highlight of the year, I have to tell you. Everybody was along there to see what they could find. So Mum rings me up, disaster, Lyn, disaster. And I go, what's happened, Mum? I didn't get there quickly enough. There was this white cardigan, and Norma, who was the bane of my mum's life, because Mum was very religious, but Norma had found God and read to her every afternoon, but Mum turned her hearing aid off. So Norma's got this white cardigan. It won't fit her, it won't suit her, it would have been perfect on me. 3 days later, hello Mum, it's great Lyn, it's all work. What is it Mum? I've got the cardigan. Vera opposite, in the room opposite, she saw Norma putting it back. Because you would keep it 3 days, you see, and then you had to hand it back. I legged it as fast as I could. Imagine I was 99.5 at this point, and I've got it. Now, it was, this is just a small story. But that was absolutely fantastic in their lives. And you saw them, because I used to go for Saturday lunch, and they'd all look splendid. So wouldn't it be great to talk to the local shops and get them to do that? I just think that would be a really nice small thing to do. The other thing very quickly we did with Mum was every Saturday morning we had a family competition on who could take her to the most exciting thing. And my daughter, who was studying vet at the time, was easy to take her down and show her all the animals that were recovering in the hospital, and Mum loved that. And I used to take her to the, to the flower show at Kings Park in September. And Richard came home one day with a huge smile on his face, and he trumped the lot. Now, Mum was brought up in Britain in the 30s, lived in a port just outside London, And if one of the family worked on the docks that day, you ate. They didn't, you didn't. And so Richard had Mum out, and the wharfies had a picket line, and they stood her at the front of the picket line. 97 on a picket line. But that, you know, that was just an exciting thing in Mum's life. But what I'm trying to say is having a decent phone that worked and keeping your hearing so you can be part of the world, how important that is. And in Britain they're introducing techniques. They did it in London. It made a huge difference, where you just send through on the mobile phone. I don't know if they do that here. This is the time you need to change your medication, how you could change it when you need to. So, because it gets really confusing. And this is another one. A young chap's just set this up, a West Australian. He set it up in Cambridge in England, but he's back here now. You just take a photo of a mole and just think how many. I can see all these age spots on me right now. You know, you get worried about it. Send them into this website. I think it costs £50 a year to be in it, but it's the principle I'm getting at. And they send you back a message, looks okay, check with the doctor next time you go, get round to the doctor straight away. Now, these sort of things where we can be more interactive to keep people healthy, I think it's a really positive way to do it. Talked about hearing, and you mentioned I'm on the board of the Ear Sciences Institute of Australia. It's just brilliant. That building in Salvador Road, just next to the church there, opposite St John of God. And when we're busy putting bionic ears into young kids and changing their lives, it's great to see. And this lady actually went deaf as she approached the age of 40. I love you. Go on her website if you wanted to. She's got a great blog up somewhere. Deaf Becomes Her, just type it in. And she talks about this journey. But it's amazing because when I said to her, what does it sound like with a cochlear implant? And she said, people sound a cross between a chipmunk and answer machine. But within a week, you are back hearing human sound, enough to be part of the world again. So here's your 7 Ages of Man from Shakespeare right through. And here's my mum in her 90s. I popped her in at the end there. She looks good, doesn't she? Very proud of her. I'm now going to ask you which age group in Western Australia has the greatest rate of increase for putting in cochlear implants. And you are not going to be surprised to hear it's the over 80s. We've put in 25, and the oldest is someone aged 98. Costs about $25,000 to do it. We've done some pro bono, but that means someone can stay living independently or live a much fuller life. So, gosh, you know, never say die. Get in and do all these things. And don't be afraid to embrace new technologies. That's why you're here today. So I love these quotes from Ken Olsen, the Digital Equipment Corporation, where she never said, there's no reason for any individual to have a computer in his home. And here Steve Ballmore said, there's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. So I'm never going to start a sentence with there is no, because I reckon it's a complete no-no. But I think it just exemplifies, look how the world has changed. There are new technologies for absolutely everyone, and age is absolutely no barrier. So good for you, good for what you're doing, and in any way I can help as Chief Scientist to make it happen even better, please remember that. I've left you some of these fun business cards for you to hopefully sign up on Twitter, share with your family or your kids, grandkids, because the more we're out there in social media, I think the more positive it can be. Thank you very much for listening.